The identity of the 1%. You don't chase success, you become the person who attracts it. By David Russo. Introduction. Stop chasing. Start becoming. Take a breath. If you are listening to this, you already know something most people never admit. Chasing success is exhausting. The constant pursuit of more money, more recognition, more validation, more freedom. It feels productive. It feels ambitious. It even feels noble. But beneath the surface, chasing keeps you in reaction mode. Always reaching, always slightly behind, always measuring yourself against something external. The 1% do not live that way. They are not frantic. They are not desperate. They are not dependent on outcomes to define them. They operate from identity. This audiobook, The Identity of the 1%, is not about hacks, shortcuts, or surface-level motivation. It is not about forcing yourself to grind harder or outwork everyone around you. It is about becoming the type of person success naturally aligns with. There is a powerful principle that governs every result in your life. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your identity. If you identify as someone who tries, your effort will fluctuate with your emotions. If you identify as someone who executes, you will find a way, especially when it's inconvenient. Identity determines standards. Standards determine behavior. Behavior determines outcomes. Most people attempt to change their results without ever changing their self-concept. They set bigger goals without building a bigger identity, and when pressure rises, they revert, not to their intentions, but to who they believe they are. The top 1% understand something different. Their advantage is not genetic. It is not luck. It is not secret knowledge. It is psychological architecture. They think differently. They regulate emotion differently. They decide faster. They tolerate calculated risk. They operate from long-term vision. They hold themselves to internal standards rather than external applause. And most importantly, they know who they are. That clarity creates power. As you move through this audiobook, you will not just hear ideas. You will experience guided shifts, reflections, breathing resets, decision drills, designed specifically for listening. This is not passive content. It is mental conditioning. You are not here to collect information. You are here to reconstruct identity. So before we go further, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, who would I need to become for my biggest goal to feel normal? Not lucky, not miraculous, not extraordinary. Normal. That version of you already exists in potential. This audiobook simply gives you the structure to build it deliberately, because success does not respond to hope. It responds to certainty, to emotional stability, to disciplined standards, to ownership, to long-term thinking, to self-trust. In other words, it responds to identity. From this moment forward, you are no longer chasing outcomes. You are becoming the person outcomes are drawn to. Welcome to the work. Welcome to the identity shift. Welcome to the 1%. Chapter 1. Identity before outcome. Pause for a moment. Before we talk about money, achievement, leadership, discipline, or performance, we need to talk about you. Not yourism. Not your goals, not your 5-year plan. You, because every external result in your life is a reflection of an internal identity. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you will subconsciously create struggle. If you see yourself as someone who figures things out, you will find solutions. If you see yourself as inconsistent, you will behave inconsistently, even with the best intentions. Identity is not what you say you want. It is what you believe you are. Most people try to change outcomes first. They say, when I lose the weight, I'll feel confident. When I make more money, I'll feel secure. When I get promoted, I'll see myself as a leader. But the 1% reverse the order. They decide who they are first. Then they act accordingly. They don't say, I'm trying to build a business. They say, I am a builder. They don't say, I'm working on discipline. They say, I am disciplined. Feel the shift. One language is temporary, the other is permanent. Your brain listens to the words you attach to yourself. It organizes behavior around identity. When you say, that's just not me, your mind stops looking for ways. When you say, that's who I am now, your mind starts aligning actions to prove it true. This is not positive thinking. This is cognitive alignment. Here's the challenge. Close your eyes, if you can. Take one slow breath in. And ask yourself, who would I need to become for my biggest goal to feel inevitable, not possible, not hopeful, inevitable? Would that version of you procrastinate? Would that version of you negotiate with excuses? Would that version of you abandon commitments when emotions dip? Or would they operate from standards? Identity creates standards. Standards eliminate negotiation. When you identify as someone who keeps promises to yourself, you don't debate whether to follow through. You follow through because violating your word would contradict who you believe you are. That is power. The 1% are not more motivated than everyone else. They are more decided. They decided, I am someone who executes. I am someone who adapts. I am someone who learns fast. I am someone who handles pressure. And once decided, they gather evidence to reinforce it. Here's your first assignment. Form 3 identity statements that align with the future you want. Not I will be. Not I'm trying to be. I am. Say them silently, then say them out loud. Your voice matters. Your nervous system responds to declared identity. At first, it may feel unfamiliar. Good. Growth always does. Remember this. Outcomes are lagging indicators. Identity is the leading one. Change who you believe you are, and your behavior adjusts. Adjust behavior consistently, and results follow. Stop chasing the outcome. Start constructing the identity, because once identity shifts, effort becomes expression, not force. And when effort becomes expression, success stops feeling like pursuit. It starts feeling like alignment. Chapter 2. Thinking in probabilities, not emotions. Take a moment and notice something. How many decisions today were based on how you felt? I don't feel ready. I don't feel confident. I don't feel motivated. I don't feel sure. Feelings are powerful. They are real. They are persuasive, but they are not always accurate. The 99% let emotion drive decision-making. The 1% let emotion inform them, but not control them. That difference changes everything. High performers understand a simple mental shift. Emotion is a signal. Probability is a strategy. When fear shows up, most people interpret it as danger. The 1% interpret it as uncertainty, and uncertainty can be measured. Instead of asking, why am I scared? They ask, what are the actual odds? What is the real probability that this presentation destroys my career? What is the statistical likelihood that one rejection defines my future? What is the evidence that this risk is catastrophic rather than uncomfortable? Most fear is imagination without math. Your brain is wired for survival, not success. It exaggerates threat. It predicts worst-case scenarios. It prefers familiarity over growth. But growth requires exposure to uncertainty. So the 1% train themselves to pause. When emotion spikes, they slow down. Right now, try this. Think of something you've been hesitating on. A call. A pitch. A move. A decision. Notice the emotion attached to it. Now ask yourself, what is the best case outcome? What is the worst case outcome? What is the most likely outcome? That third question is where power lives. The most likely outcome is rarely dramatic. It is rarely catastrophic. It is usually manageable. Probability thinking creates emotional stability. Instead of saying, this feels overwhelming, you say, this has a 70% chance of being neutral, a 20% chance of being positive, and maybe a 10% chance of being uncomfortable, not fatal. When you quantify fear, you shrink it. The 1% are not fearless. They are calibrated. They separate discomfort from danger. They separate anxiety from incapability. They separate temporary emotion from long-term consequence. This shift also protects you from impulsive decisions. Excitement can be as misleading as fear. Before committing to an opportunity, ask, what increases the probability of long-term success? Does this align with my identity? Is this sustainable or just stimulating? Emotion fluctuates hourly. Probability compounds over years. When you begin making decisions based on odds rather than moods, something remarkable happens. You become consistent, and consistency builds trust with others and with yourself. Here's your practice for this chapter. The next time you feel hesitation, don't suppress it, study it. Label the emotion, calculate the risk, assess the upside, decide based on probability, not comfort. This is how you create calm in chaos. This is how you think like the 1%, not emotionally detached. Emotionally directed, because when you think in probabilities instead of impulses, you stop reacting to life, and you start positioning yourself to win. Chapter 3. Decision speed as a superpower. Listen carefully. Indecision is a silent drain on your life, not failure, not rejection, not mistakes. Indecision. The 99% spend enormous mental energy circling choices. They replay conversations. They imagine outcomes. They seek more opinions. They wait for certainty, but certainty rarely arrives. The 1% understands something powerful. Clarity comes from action, not thought alone. They do not rush recklessly. They do not ignore information, but they refuse to live in hesitation, because every time you delay a decision, you split your energy. Part of you moves forward, part of you stays stuck. That internal tug of war is exhausting. High performers protect their cognitive energy. They know that prolonged deliberation is often disguised fear. They gather enough data, not endless data, and then they decide. And once they decide, they stop renegotiating with themselves. That's the real difference. Most people make a decision, and then reopen it the next day. Maybe I should wait. Maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe I need more preparation. Every renegotiation weakens self-trust. And self-trust is currency. Think about it. Confidence is not built from success alone. It's built from keeping promises to yourself, from making a choice and honoring it. Here's a principle the 1% live by. Imperfect action creates feedback. Indecision creates nothing. Feedback can be adjusted. Nothing cannot. Right now, bring to mind one decision you've been delaying. Feel the weight of it. Notice how often it occupies your thoughts. Notice how it lingers in the background of your day. Now ask yourself, what is the cost of waiting another month, another year? Opportunity cost compounds quietly. Here's a simple drill. Count down in your mind. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Choose. Not recklessly, but intentionally. And once chosen, commit fully. Even if the decision turns out imperfect, you will gain something far more valuable than a flawless outcome. Momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds identity. Identity reinforces future decisions. The 1% move faster, not because they are smarter, but because they are decisive. They trust their ability to adjust. They understand that most paths are not permanent. Very few decisions are irreversible, but hesitation trains your brain to doubt itself, and doubt spreads. Decision speed is not about urgency. It is about self-leadership. When you lead yourself well, others feel it. Opportunities respond to it. Momentum gathers around it. From this point forward, adopt this rule. Gather what you need. Set a deadline. Decide. Move. Because clarity is earned through motion. And the faster you decide with intention, the faster you become the person who does not hesitate in moments that matter. That is power. That is identity in action. Chapter 4. Emotional regulation, the hidden edge. Here is a truth most people overlook. Success is not built in your brightest moments. It is built in your most emotional ones. Anyone can perform when they feel confident. Anyone can focus when they feel inspired. Anyone can lead when they feel certain. But what about when you feel criticized, overlooked, frustrated, anxious, angry? This is where the separation happens. The 1% do not experience fewer emotions. They recover faster. They do not spiral for days after a setback. They do not let one comment define their self-worth. They do not allow praise to inflate them or criticism to collapse them. They return to baseline, and baseline is power. Emotional regulation is not suppression. It is control with awareness. It is the ability to feel something fully without becoming it. When criticism hits, average performers react. High performers extract data. When failure happens, average performers internalize it. High performers analyze it. When success arrives, average performers relax prematurely. High performers express gratitude, then refocus. Their nervous system is trained. Yours can be too. Right now, let's practice. Inhale slowly for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Again, longer exhale. One more time. Notice what just happened. Your body shifted. Your mind slowed. Your physiology changed. Most people try to control their thoughts first. The 1% regulate their state first. Because when your state is stable, your decisions improve. When your decisions improve, your outcomes improve. When outcomes improve, identity strengthens. Emotional volatility is expensive. It damages relationships. It clouds judgment. It erodes trust. Reliability, on the other hand, attracts opportunity. People trust those who remain steady under pressure. Leaders are not chosen for intensity. They are chosen for consistency. Ask yourself, how quickly do I recover from setbacks? How long do I replay negative moments? How often do my emotions dictate my behavior? Awareness is the first layer of mastery. From now on, when emotion spikes, do not react immediately. Pause. Name it. This is frustration. This is fear. This is disappointment. When you label an emotion, you create distance from it. Distance creates choice, and choice is where identity lives. The 1% are not emotionally cold. They are emotionally disciplined. They feel deeply, but they decide deliberately. Train your nervous system. Train your responses. Train your recovery speed. Because the real advantage is not talent. It is stability under pressure. And when you become the person who stays grounded when others panic, calm when others spiral, focused when others fracture, you don't just improve performance, you become trusted, you become respected, you become powerful. That is the hidden edge. That is emotional regulation, and that is the identity of the 1%. Chapter 5. Risk is measured, not avoid. Let's confront something honestly. You cannot build an extraordinary life while trying to eliminate all risk. Security feels safe, predictability feels responsible, comfort feels intelligent, but stagnation hides inside comfort. The 99% avoided risk because they equate it with danger. They imagine loss, embarrassment, failure, instability. The 1% see risk differently. They don't ask, how do I avoid uncertainty? They ask, how do I manage it intelligently? Risk is not the enemy, and calculated risk is. There is a difference between gambling and strategic exposure. High performers understand asymmetric risk, small downside, massive upside. They evaluate 3 questions before acting. What is the upside? What is the downside? Can I survive the downside? That last question changes everything. Most opportunities are not life or death. They are ego or comfort. Will this stretch you? Yes. Will it challenge your identity? Probably. Will it destroy you? Rarely. But your brain exaggerates the threat, so let's slow it down. Think about a risk you've been avoiding. A career move, a conversation, a creative project, an investment in yourself. Now assess it clearly. What is the realistic worst-case scenario? Not the dramatic one, the realistic one. Temporary embarrassment, financial discomfort, a lesson learned. Now compare that to the potential upside. Growth, opportunity, expanded skill, new identity. The 1% do not leap blindly. They prepare. They build skill before scaling exposure. They test before committing fully. They diversify rather than concentrate recklessly. But they move, because avoiding risk guarantees one thing: mediocrity. Every major leap in your life will require stepping into uncertainty. New rooms, new expectations, new standards. If you wait until you feel fearless, you will wait forever. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is forward motion despite it. Here is a shift to adopt. Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what if I regret not trying? Regret compounds quietly over years. Short-term discomfort fades. Long-term stagnation lingers. The 1% also understand timing. They do not risk recklessly when fragile. They strengthen their foundation first. Skills, savings, network, knowledge. Then they take calculated swings. You don't need to risk everything. You need to risk enough to grow. So ask yourself today, where am I playing smaller than my potential? What calculated risk would stretch me, but not destroy me? Then design the move. Reduce the downside. Increase your preparation. Set a clear action date. And step forward. Because growth does not live inside safety. It lives at the edge of your current identity. And when you expand your tolerance for measured risk, you expand your capacity for success. The 1% are not reckless. They are strategic. And strategy, executed with courage, changes everything. Chapter 6. Standards over motivation. Let's be honest about motivation. It feels powerful when it's there. It feels electric. It makes you believe you can change everything overnight. And then it disappears. The 99% build their lives around motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to feel driven. The 1% build their lives around standards. Standards do not fluctuate with mood. Standards do not depend on weather, sleep, or praise. Standards are decisions made in advance. Motivation says, I'll do it when I feel like it. Standards say, this is who I am. That difference creates consistency, and consistency compounds. Think about the areas that shape your future most: sleep, health, preparation, skill development, deep, focused work. If you rely on motivation for those, your results will be unpredictable. But when you set non-negotiables, your identity strengthens. The 1% do not wake up asking, do I feel disciplined today? They operate from internal rules. I train. I prepare. I show up on time. I finish what I start. I protect my focus. Not because they feel inspired, because it is their baseline. Baseline determines trajectory. Raise your baseline, and average days improve. Improve average days, and long-term results transform. Here's something important. Standards are not about perfection. They are about alignment. If your identity is I am someone who keeps promises to myself, then missing once is a data point. Missing repeatedly is a breach of identity, and identity resists breach. So ask yourself, what are my current standards? Not my goals, my standards. What do I tolerate in my schedule? What do I tolerate in my habits? What do I tolerate in my environment? What do I tolerate in myself? Your life reflects what you tolerate. If your standard for preparation is low, performance will fluctuate. If your standard for focus is low, distraction will dominate. If your standard for effort is conditional, results will be inconsistent. Now imagine raising one standard, just one. Not dramatically, not unrealistically, incrementally. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier. Arrive 10 minutes before required. Finish one more task than expected. Train when you said you would, even if it's inconvenient. Small upgrades to standards create identity shifts, and identity shifts create exponential growth. Here's a phrase to anchor this chapter. I do not rise to motivation. I operate from standards. Say it internally. Feel the weight of it. Standards remove negotiation. Negotiation drains energy. Energy saved fuels excellence. The 1% are not constantly inspired. They are consistently disciplined. And discipline, repeated daily, builds a life that no temporary burst of motivation ever could. Set your standards, live them quietly, and watch how your identity and your outcomes rise to meet them. Chapter 7. Long-term orientation. Most people are optimizing for today. The 1% are optimizing for decades. That single shift in time horizon changes behavior, patience, and identity. The 99% ask, what feels good now? What pays off quickly? What gives immediate validation? The 1% ask a different question. What compounds? Compounding is not exciting at first. It is quiet. It is repetitive. It is often invisible. But over time, it becomes unstoppable. Skills compound. Reputation compounds. Trust compounds. Health compounds. Wealth compounds. Self-respect compounds. Short-term thinking chases dopamine. Long-term thinking builds legacy. This does not mean ignoring the present. It means using the present strategically. When faced with a decision, high performers filter it through a powerful lens. Will this matter in 5 years? If the answer is no, they conserve their energy. Arguments that won't matter. Trends that won't last. Ego battles that don't build anything meaningful. They protect their focus for what endures. Here's a perspective shift. Imagine yourself 10 years from now, not just older, elevated, stronger, calmer, more skilled, financially stable, respected, grounded. Picture that version clearly. How do they think? How do they move? What do they no longer tolerate? What did they commit to consistently over time? That future identity was not built in a burst of motivation. It was built through repeated, aligned decisions. The 1% delay gratification, not as punishment, but as strategy. They invest in learning when others scroll. They train when others skip. They build relationships when others transact. They choose depth over distraction because they understand something powerful. Today's discipline is tomorrow's freedom. Short-term comfort often creates long-term limitation. Short-term sacrifice often creates long-term leverage. This is not about extreme deprivation. It is about alignment with your future self. When tempted by something immediate but misaligned, ask, does this serve the person I am becoming? If it does, proceed confidently. If it doesn't, release it without drama. Long-term orientation also builds emotional stability. When you think in decades, a bad day feels small. A single failure feels instructional, not defining. A slow season feels temporary, not permanent. Perspective reduces panic. And reduced panic improves performance. The 1% are patient, but not passive. They act daily, but they measure progress yearly. And over time, that patience becomes a competitive advantage. So today, shift your timeline. Zoom out. Think beyond the week, beyond the month, beyond the year. Think in chapters. Think in eras. Then act accordingly, because the identity you are building is not for this moment. It is for the long game. And when you commit to the long game, you stop chasing quick wins and start constructing a life that compounds beyond expectation. Chapter 8. Environment as a force multiplier. There is a belief that holds many people back. I just need more willpower. But willpower is fragile. Environment is powerful. The 99% rely on discipline alone. The 1% design surroundings that make discipline easier. Because environment shapes behavior, often without you noticing. The conversations you hear, the standards you observe, the expectations around you, to digital inputs you consume, to physical space you work in. All of it is conditioning you. If you are surrounded by distraction, you will fight distraction daily. If you are surrounded by mediocrity, excellence will feel extreme. If you are surrounded by growth, growth becomes normal. Environment silently sets your baseline. High performers understand this. They choose rooms carefully. They put themselves in spaces where they are not the most advanced person, where the standard is higher, where thinking is bigger, where execution is sharper. Not for ego, for expansion, because proximity influences identity. If everyone around you tolerates excuses, excuses feel acceptable. If everyone around you honors commitments, commitment feels standard. Now ask yourself, who do I spend the most time with? What conversations dominate my week? What content fills my attention? What physical environment shapes my focus? Your answers reveal your trajectory. Environment is not only people, it is structure. The 1% create systems that remove friction. They schedule deep work. They silence notifications. They prepare the night before. They make the right choice the easy choice. If you want to train consistently, prepare your space in advance. If you want to read more, place books within reach. If you want to think bigger, limit exposure to small thinking. Stop relying on constant self-control. Start engineering alignment. There is another layer to environment, identity cues. Your surroundings either reinforce who you were or who you are becoming. Does your space reflect your future or your past? Do your routines reflect growth or comfort? Do your inputs challenge you or validate stagnation? Upgrading your environment is not about status. It is about standards. Sometimes the shift is external, new circles, new spaces, new expectations. Sometimes it is internal, removing negative inputs, restructuring time, protecting energy. But either way, the message is the same. Environment beats intention, so design deliberately. Choose conversations that elevate. Choose rooms that stretch. Choose systems that support. Because when your surroundings demand growth, growth stops feeling forced. It becomes natural, and when growth becomes natural, identity shifts faster. The 1% do not fight their environment daily. They build one that multiplies them. Do the same, and watch how much easier excellence becomes when your surroundings work for you instead of against you. Chapter 9. Ownership without excuse. There is a defining mental shift that separates participants from true leaders. Ownership, not selective ownership, not situational ownership. Absolute ownership. Most people look outward when something breaks down. The industry, the economy, management, their past, their environment. And to be fair, those factors are real. Circumstances matter. The top performers ask a different, more empowering question. What part of this was within my influence? Blame pushes authority away from you. Ownership pulls it back. Blame may validate your frustration, but it strips you of control. Ownership may sting your pride, but it restores your agency. And agency creates forward motion. Elite performers live by a simple code. Even if I didn't cause it, I am responsible for how I respond. That adjustment alone rewires results. When a project collapses, instead of saying, "They didn't back me," they ask, "Where could I have clarified expectations?" When progress slows, instead of saying, "The timing wasn't right," they ask, "What structure was missing?" When tension rises in a relationship, instead of saying, "They don't get me," they ask, "What boundary or standard did I fail to communicate?" Ownership is not about condemning yourself. It is about leading yourself. It is choosing not to position yourself as a casualty of events. Here's the reality. A victim mindset can feel comforting at first. It protects the ego. It guards self-image. But it quietly sabotages development, because if everyone else is at fault, you have nothing to adjust. High achievers look for leverage. They identify what can be shifted: their preparation, their output, their clarity, their skill, their attitude. They cannot dictate every result, but they can always choose their reaction. Think of something in your life right now that feels stuck or frustrating. Be honest. Where have I surrendered influence? Where am I waiting instead of refining? What can I upgrade, even marginally? A small increase in ownership creates disproportionate movement, and movement reshapes identity. Ownership also builds trust. People rely on those who don't deflect, who don't rationalize, who don't default to excuses. They trust the person who says, "That's mine. I'll handle it." That statement builds respect faster than flawless performance. Adopt this principle going forward. No excuses, only recalibration. If it fails, evaluate. If it falls apart, reconstruct. If it wounds, extract the lesson. Ownership converts every outcome into usable force, and applied force becomes advantage. Top performers aren't shielded from adversity. They're resistant to helplessness. They protect their agency at all costs. When you protect your agency, you stop living reactively and start operating intentionally. That is strength. That is growth. That is identity expressed at its peak. Chapter 10. Becoming unrecognizable. Real transformation is never mild. It is not a minor adjustment. It is not a cosmetic habit change. It is not surface-level mindset work. Authentic transformation reshapes identity. Top performers don't simply get better. They reconstruct themselves. They exceed former environments. They discard limiting narratives. They endure being misunderstood. They accept discomfort as proof of expansion. From the outside, their change may seem abrupt. From the inside, it is strategic, deliberate, purpose-driven. To those who remain stagnant, growth can look like ego. To those who avoid risk, confidence feels intimidating. To those who value comfort, intensity appears excessive. That is the cost of becoming unrecognizable. Try this. Envision the future version of yourself. Give that identity a title if it clarifies the image. See them distinctly. How do they communicate? How do they carry themselves? How do they process pressure? What behaviors do they accept, and which do they reject? Then confront the pivotal question. What would that version of me choose today? That answer is your compass. Not the convenient option, not the easy path, not the popular route. The highest version of you operates with different standards, makes sharper decisions, responds with greater discipline. Each action aligned with that identity compounds over time. High achievers understand identity is not inherited, it is designed, reinforced, strengthened through repetition and courage. Becoming someone new requires releasing what is familiar. It requires outgrowing behaviors that once felt safe. It requires stepping directly into discomfort with intention. Pay attention to the internal resistance. That friction signals expansion. It marks the tension between your past and your potential. Don't retreat from it. Move toward it. The top tier do not just accumulate achievements. They accumulate character. They evolve into individuals who naturally magnetize opportunity and influence. They don't pursue recognition. They become undeniable. Right now, step into that identity. Name it. Embody it. Decide from it. Every conversation, every obstacle, every choice is practice for that future self. The more consistently you act as them, the faster that identity solidifies. Growth is not accidental. It is intentional. It is disciplined. It is identity-driven reinvention. So choose today. Will you stay familiar, or will you evolve beyond recognition? Because high performers are not defined by their history. They are defined by their direction. And now, that applies to you. Conclusion. The identity that attracts success. Here is an uncomfortable truth. Success does not pursue effort alone. It does not reward long workdays, temporary inspiration, or short bursts of willpower. Success aligns with identity. The top 1% are not extraordinary beings. They are not gifted with extra hours. They are not uniquely fortunate. They are intentional about who they become. They build conviction. They build consistency. They build emotional discipline. They build uncompromising standards. They build long-range vision. They build strategic courage. They build ownership. Each repeated choice, each reinforced habit, each protected standard compounds into a distinct identity, and that identity produces results organically. You don't hunt wealth. You become a consistent creator of value. You don't chase confidence. You become someone who honors commitments to yourself. You don't demand respect. You become someone whose competence and composure command it. Remember this principle. You don't elevate to the height of your ambitions. You default to the depth of your identity. That's why strategy without identity collapses. Motivation without identity fades. Willpower without identity expires. Identity endures. Identity multiplies. Identity determines direction. From this point forward, filter every decision through one lens. Is this aligned with the 1% version of me? Answer truthfully. Then move in alignment. Daily decisions, repeated consistently, construct a presence that stands out effortlessly. Momentum begins to cooperate. Doors open. Standards rise. Performance sharpens. Eventually, what once felt distant no longer feels aspirational. It feels inevitable. You are no longer in pursuit of success. You are evolving into the kind of person it gravitates toward. This is the real work. This is the identity of the 1%. Step into it.